G'day, Paul from Small Crown Productions here, and welcome to the Business of Art. On this channel, I dig into all of the things that we need to help us build a business around our creative work. So tips, tools, strategies, interviews, mindset, whatever I can do to help share knowledge from people who know what they're talking about so that we can do business better and make money from our creative work. So if that is something you are interested in, please consider subscribing. This video is one in a series of over 15 videos relating to tax and finance for creative people in Australia. So this is specific to Australia. It is also general advice. Always, always, always seek specific advice about your situation in your region or country where you are. What I did was ask my creative network for a question that they would love to ask a tax and finance specialist, and then I bundled them all up and took them to Matt Tucker, the principal of Creative Crunches here in Brisbane. Creative Crunches is an arts-focused accountancy firm. They know what they're talking about when it comes to Australian tax law, tax and finance for creative people. But again, general advice. Always seek specific advice to your situation. Matt was super generous to donate his time. I cannot thank him enough for taking the time out of his day to actually sit and answer these questions for us all. So with that, let's dive in to today's question. At what point am I required to register for GST?
So GST has a turnover threshold test of 75,000 per annum in gross terms. So that's what you need to be looking at, the amount of gross income from the business. If you've got multiple businesses being run, be aware that that is across your ABN as a whole. So you'd want to be looking at the gross income from all your different business activities.
And that 75,000 is earned against the ABN, not including wages.
That's right. We're just sort of talking, it's all against the ABN. But the test is what they call a rolling monthly test. It's not confined necessarily to a financial year. So what the rules say, they want you to look at your turnover in your current month and look back over the previous 11 months and ask yourself the question, has my business turned over more than 75,000? If it has, prima facie, you're probably under a requirement to get registered within 21 days of becoming aware of this fact. However, there is a potential out from that, and that is if a person were to look at their current month's turnover and do a best projection of the next 11 months, the question is, are you reasonably certain that you're going to be over this 75,000 over the next 11 months as well? Now that's hard in the arts too, because it's fluctuating and it's crystal balling. So maybe that's easier said than done, but we've got some clients that face this threshold test because they've had a lucrative contract, might have been a 6-month sort of thing, and they look back over and they say, Matt, we've gone over, but we need to register. But the first question I would say is like, if it's come from one of those abnormal contracts, well, what is your work pipeline looking at the moment? Have you got another one of those? Because if they don't, then you could probably say with some reasonable certainty that the projected turnover is not going to be 75. Now, if a taxpayer's in that boat, the rules don't require them to get registered yet. And that's because they don't want a person getting to a point where they've already traded for 12 months. They look at their business and it says, well, historically you're over 75, just get registered, because then it's almost as though in theory they really should have been registered from the beginning of that financial year, and the government has missed their GST registration point by 12 months. But then if the rules just then forced someone to go into it and then there is no turnover over 75, the rules almost make them get registered for a silly period of time. They should have been registered here, but they're making them get registered in a future period where they're not even over that threshold. So the rules are deliberately flexible to try to say to taxpayers, look, you do need to be in there when the business is turning over more than 75, but we need to be a bit flexible about it so that we're not unnecessarily registering people.
Because they've had a tentpole moment.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So it's a constant sort of thing now. Even though a taxpayer may feel that they don't have that confidence over the projected turnover, sometimes we will have clients that still look at that and say, you know what, it's just time to bite off this particular part of the business's development, and now that it's up and running and I've got my head around my bookkeeping practices, let's start talking about GST and just maybe building the systems, because the business is still operating, and it might be that I face this GST question just 2 months from now. 3 months from now. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be out of that question for another 12 months. That turnover question is constantly facing them all the time, every single month. So, some people will then just voluntarily put themselves into the system. And you can actually put yourself voluntarily into the system. You could do that from day one if you wanted to.
There we go. Thanks again to Matt Tucker from Creative Crunches for taking the time to answer these questions. If you have a tax and finance question of your own that you would like to ask, please pop it in the comments below and I will do everything I can to get that answered, or link you to one of the other videos where it may already have been asked and answered. Also in the description below is a link to the playlist that contains all of these tax and finance questions, so you can dig through there and see if your question has already been answered. And of course, it would be fantastic if you could like this video, subscribe to the channel, but most importantly, if you got something of value out of this, there is a good chance you will know somebody else who can as well. Please share it with them, tag them in the comments, whatever you've got to do, pay it forward so that we can keep helping each other out. Thanks very much. I'll see you on the next one.